This is Jim Whitehead. Very nice to have you here. This is All Power Group, and this series, which I'm having a lot of fun with, is called Scary Generator Stories. Over the 18 years as being a dealer, generator dealer, I have so many funny, sad animal stories that I probably could be doing this for 100 years. But thank you for being here, and we're going to progress right along into the slides. What you're seeing here is an exhaust system inside a generator. I installed this unit in 2006. And why it has rusted out so badly is because it's next to a pool. Some might say, a pool, it's not in the pool, but believe it or not, there's just enough airflow during the day, not every day, but a lot, especially when it's storming a little bit, that the air actually gets saturated salt. And especially when these generators are running, because they have to keep themselves cool, they're pulling air, and a lot of air, from the outside. So what happens is, it just starts to rust things out. I tried to fix this by wrapping it. This is particular exhaust, but I found that it was even worse than that. It was even the mufflers. What ended up happening, they put in a new generator to replace it. And really, when you think about it, it was almost 18 years old. So they had gotten their use out of it. It'd been a very reliable unit. In fact, it's the 2.5 four-cylinder Ford engine, and they were and still are one of the best engines for these generators. What you're seeing here, and these are when you have certain equipment that's inside a generator, some of it makes sense, some of it doesn't. This is what they call a magnetic pickup. It goes in, screws in right within a millimeter of the flywheel. And what it's designed to do tells the generator's controller what the RPMs, revolutions per minute. And generators, to put out the correct power, need to be at a very set RPM. In this case, the unit I just showed you, that was an 1800 RPM unit. So for it to put out the right power, and especially the hertz, the cycles, 60 cycles, it has to run at 1800 RPMs. Any more, and you're going to be you're going up higher on hertz. Any less, you're going to be low on hertz. And a hertz problem has a problem with basically not damaging motors, especially compressors that are in refrigerators. So we have to pull this out all the time, because with that, as you see, the residue on the end of that has been pulled up because it's magnetic. And somebody say, why would they use magnetism right next to a flywheel that in Florida will rust over time, and little flakes of metal will be pulled up on the mag pickup? But that's the way it is. So you always had to take these out, clean them, and readjust them. So the thing is, some equipment doesn't make sense of what we have in the generator. Now, we all know we went through the coronavirus pandemic. This is a picture of me back in approximately March of 2020. And this was on a Tuesday. That following the Friday at the end of the week, they ended up, as you remember, shutting down everything and saying that people couldn't be around anything. So I went in, because I knew we were kind of heading in that direction. I went into the building department on that Tuesday, which was before this happening. And when I walked in, I had this mask on. And I saw people kind of like chuckling under their breath, like, oh, what a jerk. Why does he have a mask on? What does he think there's a pandemic? And I went to, and this was submitting permits, applications for a generator job. I ended up sitting with a nice young lady that I had submitted another generator the week before. Of course, I didn't have a mask on. This time I have the mask. She knows who I am. She acted like I was a distant cousin that they hated and they never thought they'd ever see again. I asked her, and she's very non-communicable, because she just was thinking, what is this guy doing? Is he sick? Yada, yada, yada. I said to her, has anybody started wearing masks? And she said, no. Like again, you are a jerk. So it was funny because 4 days later, we shut down and we're told we have to wear masks. Okay, going to the next slide. What you're seeing, and this has happened not too many times, thank goodness, in my career, but tanks that we're gonna put underground, propane tanks, will float if they're not anchored properly and they are not loaded with gas. It doesn't necessarily have to be full, but it has to be up there. Too often when we're installing a tank, we dig the hole, we get it in, we get it anchored. We have to leave it open for approximately 24 hours until it gets inspected, so that all the things we have to do to put the tank in the ground correctly, an inspector can see. But that leaves about 24 hours of a tank that can float. And I'd say about 3 times in 18 years, I came back in the morning and sure enough, it was basically up on the top of the ground. So what we have to do, it in most cases, it doesn't damage anything, but we have to just do the whole thing over again. Okay, in some of what you see, hopefully in my presentations, I talk about generator service needs to be more than just generator service. If you don't have a good gas line, equipment, regulators sized properly, you're not going to have a good running generator. And with generators, they might run okay under what I say is no load. That means it's just running the engine. But as soon as they go under a load, the requirement for a good amount of propane in this case goes up significantly. So if you don't have a good regulator, this regulator you're looking at is at least 20 years old. They're not expensive. They're about 50 bucks. So there is really almost no excuse to leave this type of equipment that's so old servicing your generator that you want to make sure that you have power. By the way, that's a second stage regulator, and there's more than one. You'll see another one in a little bit. Now, we, of course, hook our generator to power. Everything has to be hooked in, excuse me, I'm sorry on that. Everything has to be hooked in to the customer's electrical system. And factually, we have Florida Power and Light. They don't like to admit it, but they do have, in certain times during the day, they have surges, they have, overloads. They could have a transformer that explodes, and basically for a short bit, doesn't take much, the power is way off. And it will take out this equipment. And as you can see, that's the back of this transfer relay. It really took a beating. And what happens with that being like that, it's not working. And if you were to lose power, you will not, your generator might start up, but I can guarantee you it will not transfer, meaning taking you off the dead FPL connection and putting you on the generator connection so that you have power. This is another example, as I said I would be showing you, of just terrible, old equipment. This is a first stage regulator. And what is even more creepy about this one versus the other one I just showed you, this is connected right at the propane tank. This is designed to drop tank pressure, which is 250 psi. And by the way, we've had to upsize piping and do a lot of things differently with our gas installations because of climate change. Things have gotten warmer. So what happens during the day, when this tank gets warmer, the pressure goes up. And so it's counting on this first stage regulator to ensure that they are basically, knocking the gas pressure down correctly. It goes from 250 psi to 10 psi, then goes over to the green second stage regulator, which knocks it down to an appropriate pressure, but a good amount of volume of gas. So I would actually say these gas issues are more important than generator issues, because you could have a great generator, but if you do not have a good gas line system, you're not going to be doing real well. Now, things rust. And here's an example of a line that just let go. It's material failure, corrosion, movement, vandalism. So basically this could be a explosive problem. Now, people have asked me about propane. Is it real dangerous? And accordingly, it's not generally. As I said in another presentation, on a scale of 1 to 6, gasoline is a 6, propane is a 3. So it's not as violently explosive, but if you get enough gas in a location, it will basically explode. And I would say generally in most cases, the only thing we have to worry about would be somebody that's malicious. I mean, if somebody wants to whack a tank, it will basically potentially leak and explode. Here is another propane explosion. In my last presentation, I showed another one. And what basically happens, you've got that first stage regulator, you have the second stage regulator, and inside the generator you have a demand regulator. That's why these are so important, because you got 3 points of failure beyond the lines themselves, corrosion and salt water, so on and so forth. Well, what happens is the demand regulator has it's almost $1.98 part, but it goes on top of the demand regulator, and it's what we call a coil, fuel coil. And when generator is needing to run, it basically opens up that fuel coil. It's magnetized, and it will pull up a plunger, and it will allow the gas to go into the generator, and just like a car with gasoline. But what happens is sometimes these coils that, again, aren't really expensive, and they haven't changed them in all the time I've been in the business, they start to seep gas. So when the generator is just sitting there should be no gas going into anything related to the generator, because the generator is not running. It starts letting gas into the system. And generators exercise at least once a week, so you're going to have at least one running time per week. And basically what will happen is it collects in the exhaust system and basically explodes. Now what you're looking at now, all generators that we've installed, 99% of the time, we crane them in. They are set up with a steel frame on the bottom. Everything is attached to that. And on each of the corners of that steel frame are holes. And those are designed to basically open up and connect to each of the 4 corners so you can lift the generator. When anybody says, oh, I don't think I can afford a crane, I don't want to do a crane, I'm just going to kind of bring it into the yard, I'm going to maybe put it on some rollers, the old Egyptian style of, we have sometimes used this for slabs, or we use 4-inch PVC, and we use it just as, rolling on these to get from point A to point B. But with a generator, the case is aluminum. And yes, it's attached to the frame, but very, very specifically, it is not designed to be pushed on. So if you're doing it the old-fashioned way or the cheap way, you're probably going to bend the case, and that's just not acceptable. When you're installing a generator, if somebody says, well, I really couldn't afford to do a crane, you shouldn't be doing the generator business, because that is one of the key logical parts of an installation. Getting the generator in safely, and that you haven't hurt anything or bent anything. So that's something to keep an eye on. Now, I want to just say I'm enjoying these presentations. Hopefully I'm starting to get a little bit better. I'm having a great time, and you helping me out here by watching these is so much appreciated. I'm a 73-year-old tech guy, generator guy, solar guy, coffee roaster, and some other fun things. I had done some content creation 12, 13 years ago, and you'll see some of those oldies but goodies, I would say, that are still on my site, because I was able to reactivate it. So as soon as I sold one of my generator companies in December, I said, you know, even though I'm moving to Naples, I'm gonna just start my content creation, and this is my full-time job now, and it's a lot of fun. And again, thank you. This is Jim Whitehead of All Power Group, and thanks again for being here. I really appreciate it.